Joining us once again is the founder of militarymutual.org. Please welcome our next guest, Derek Barksdale.
There he is.
Hey.
Mr. Barksdale. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing outstanding. And you?
All right, great to have you here.
Good. Good to be here.
Big stuff.
Always.
Big things happening. New reality show on the horizon.
On the horizon.
Changing Stations. Amazing name, by the way.
Thank you.
And this is about helping people who are in San Diego who are receiving PCS orders
Yes.
to move, basically. That's where the military tells them, hey, guess what? You're going to be moved from San Diego to here. You get those orders, and now all of a sudden, what do you do next?
Exactly.
You got a lot of things to do. So this show is going to highlight that, which is also something that you do a lot through your organization, Military Mutual, the Military Mutual Initiative.
Affirmative.
First of all, let's talk about just, from the show process, what's sort of the purpose in your mind behind showing people, illuminating what's going on in this process?
Yeah, well, good question. It really all comes down to adding the visibility to the stresses that are around a PCS move. Unlike a normal corporate relocation that someone would have at IBM where they have up to a year to figure this whole thing out, unfortunately military members are having now only up to 2 months to figure it out. They've recently changed the way that they fund the orders for the service member. That being said, it used to be a credit card, so they used to have 6 months out to plan for things. Now it's more like a debit card, so they have to have the cash in hand before they cut the orders. So people are now getting orders 1 to 2 months out prior to when it is that they're supposed to move on. That being said, a lot of people unfortunately are waiting until they get hard cut orders in their hands before they make these decisions on where to move forward. And what happens is they forget a lot of things, and it adds to the stresses of the move, which is already stressful enough, as you know.
Yeah.
So what we really want to do is add the visibility to that stressful move, but at the same time give them some solutions to the stresses and get ahead of that, so when they make that move, it's a smooth transition. And already, through the things that we've done, people have said, this is the easiest move that I've ever had. So that's what we want to make happen in the end.
So we want to help people who are going through that process, make it easy, but also show people that, hey, this is what your service members are going through.
Yeah.
I mean, you may not realize this, but they are being told to move from here to there, and they have to do all these things, meanwhile protect and serve the country.
Exactly.
And they also have family members that are all affected by this as well.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that I'm really curious to see, because I have no idea. You've done this. You've been PCS.
Absolutely, 9 times.
9 times.
9 times. So it's stressful, and there's a lot of lessons learned that you capture throughout the years. And I know a lot of people, have been trained in areas such as the Military Relocation Professional course that the National Association of Realtors provides, but going through it firsthand can't be replaced by any means. That being said, I've had the option of not only going through the course, but now I'm an instructor for the National Association of Realtors, and really put a lot of these different steps in place to help people think ahead and be prepared for it. So with that being said, there's a lot of things that people have to be prepared for, because we're going through some different casting on some people that are going through a PCS move right now, and the wife is going to have to do the whole move by herself. We have another person that's going to have to give away their dog just to make the move happen. And then they have their children. Does the spouse work? How do you get ahead of that? So those are the things that we really want to capture and add that visibility
Researching
to.
schools in the new location,
Yes.
neighborhoods,
Yeah.
all those things go into it. And when you have a short time frame, but you still have all the same responsibilities that you do in your normal day life, it's hard to kind of squeeze all that stuff in.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. It's like the old story of where the professor got on stage and said, okay, he put some rocks in a bottle and said, okay, to the students, is this glass full? And they said yes. And then he throws some pebbles in there, and they say, yes, it's still full. And then he throws some sand in there, then he throws water in there, and then they finally figure out, oh, okay, now it's full. And what was the lesson to it? The lesson was really that you have to get the big rocks in the jar first. And so the big rocks really are overlooked a lot of times, and they ultimately get to their new duty station, and they're like, oh my gosh, we forgot to plan for childcare. What are we going to do here? And so now they find themselves where the wife has to stay home, can't go to that job that they hopefully planned for to get to. But now there is a plan, there is a way to get ahead of all that 2 to 3 months ahead of time.
And you have a succinct process
Yes.
to take people through with this, because a lot of these people have never been PCS before.
No.
They've never received those orders. And you said that people are waiting for hard cut orders. Does that mean, do they get some sort of warning shot that like, hey, you know, you might be getting relocated in the next 6 months or something, but then they don't get the hard cut orders until, you know, 8 weeks out?
Very good question, once again. And so people who haven't went through it, typically 6 to 9 months out is when a service member is looking at negotiating orders, is what it's called. And typically they may identify it online, or they may be speaking with their detailer, and they identify a set of locations that they want to go to. And then the detailer will say, okay, well, hey, we could send you to Virginia, and you'll be at this XYZ command. At that point in time, they're just on hold. Okay, hopefully this goes through. Sometimes it may change up. Typically, they try to keep it set in stone as much as possible. But until hard cut orders are in hand, which is the paper copy or electronic copy that comes via email or message traffic, is it really set in stone? So a lot of people are like, I don't know, this may change. Now they've made something called a letter of intent, where a person can at least feel more confident that those orders are going to be in place. But not everyone is able to get those, and even those are delayed at times. So that whole process with getting hard cut orders is a stress in itself, because you are planning to go in this place, but that could be changed until you get hard cut orders.
Okay, so if you have to wait until then to know for sure when you can start taking action, you can still do some research before.
Absolutely.
You can use your checklist, if you will, your timeline of, all right, well, these are the things that need to be done, so let's start putting as many big rocks in these jars as we possibly can.
That's it.
Now, so that we have at least the information. We have a starting point. We're not starting from square one.
No.
That's the problem. You should wait till they get the hard cut orders and you start from square one, you really got a problem.
Exactly. One big example is spouse employment. So a lot of spouses are actually employed with companies here in San Diego that we're seeing, and they have certifications. And those certifications to get in a new state takes a long process in itself. So if they're, let's say, an ER nurse that we're working with now, that process could be 9 months if they move to Florida to get a new ER certification for that state. The good thing is that a lot of people don't realize that if they're married to an active duty service member, the Joining Forces program allows for them to expedite that certification process. So that ER nurse that we've already worked with, she didn't know anything about it. We were able to get her certification and interim certification before she even got there. Whereas before, that may have been a delay of 9 months, where she gets there, figures it out, and she's off of work for 9 months. So if you don't have those things in place, the big rocks can really have a ripple effect, not only on the spouse that was anticipating being employed. The family then takes a hard cut on, now what are we going to do for the extra funding that we had? And then ultimately, our nation ends up hurting, because now the service member's mind isn't totally dedicated towards getting their job done. It's also in place of, how am I going to take care of my family? And those are the things that ultimately delay the readiness of the military.
Yeah, which is something that's also an amazing consequence of doing what you do day in and day out, then also of the show and showing people that, like, hey, you know, we need to provide a hand where we can. We need to be able to empathize at least a little bit with what's going on. I really look forward to watching the show, to be
That's
honest
going to be
with you.
awesome. I'm so excited for this. And there's so many people that we've already spoken with about the show, and we're saying, we want the unique circumstances. And they're like, well, nothing's unique about my circumstance. And then we start finding out that, like we said, they'll have to give away their dog, or, that being said, they're going to have to make a move with multi-families to make it happen, and there's a lot of stresses that they just suck up and just deal with, because that's the norm for them. But it's so unique to the average civilian that may have never experienced that. And so what we want to do is show, hey, these are the stresses. Where is it going? But how do we get in front of that and make it a happy situation in the end?
Yeah, and your guys are doing all the heavy lifting on that, which is amazing. I think the show is going to be amazing. Mr. Barksdale, thank you so much for coming, man. Really appreciate you. Tune in next week for more Smarter San Diego TV. Same time, same channel. We'll see you then.